Hello, this is Dreamingstitcher here after almost 4 months to bring you an update on what I've been doing with my cross stitching. Thank you for tuning in to watch the video. I hope I have something of interest to show you. It's been a long time for a couple of different reasons. Some of them not good, but I'm going to save that for after the stitching because most of you are just here to see the stitching. If you are interested in life updates or other things, I have 3 subjects to talk about afterwards. One being why it's been a while. There's been some not very good things happening in my life. A lot of tears. I have some updates on my Sable videos that I kept mentioning before, my stash acquired beyond life expectancy. Kind of an update on those, and comments on a book and some reflections that I've had. But all of that kind of relates back to the Sable videos too. But I'm going to do the stitching first, so that if you're not interested in any of that other stuff, you can just tune out when I'm done. Okay, I'm here today because I had a finish, and if I don't show it to you now, it's going to be gifted and I won't have another opportunity, and that's really kind of the only reason I'm filming today. But I do have a finish and a couple of new starts, and I worked on, I think, 4 other projects, unless I'm counting one of the starts in there. And I'll make this kind of a year-end update too, and go ahead and show you my other 3 whips that I didn't work on, just because it kind of has to do with my 2020 plans. So this is going to be finish, starts, works in progress, 2020 plans, the whole thing all rolled into one, because I don't know when I'll next have a finish and be back to show you anything. Okay, let's begin with that finish first. It is something I showed you the start of in my last video back at the end of August, and of course it's going to be tricky to get it with no glare, and I can tell you the light today is going to be terrible. But here we have the Gila Cliff Dwellings National Monument. It is a design from the Posey collection, which I had not heard of before purchasing this. Apparently, from what I've seen since, they do a lot of designs that have to do with parks and monuments and tourist places. They also have some designs of early American flags and colonial soldiers and things like that. I guess they're into maybe marketing them at the venues that they represent. I don't know, because I did not see this when I went to the Gila Cliff Dwellings National Monument, which I have been to. I showed you this start. I got it on clearance from 123 Stitch, and as soon as I saw it, I thought I need to make that for somebody in particular. It's because, yes, I have been there. When I go to visit family, sometimes we like to take day trips, and this was one of those excursions that we took. And the person who did the most driving kind of uses this as a reference point for all trips since. Did they take as long as the Gila Cliff Dwellings? Or is it better than the Gila Cliff Dwellings? The actual monument is lovely, but the last bit of the journey is on all these twisty mountain roads and things that just take way longer than you expect. We got there before they were closing, but it certainly took us longer to get there than we expected. Anyway, this is in a really boring brown Hobby Lobby frame because it's so hard to get wooden frames anymore. I had the mat cut a couple of days ago. That wouldn't have happened if I'd known how my afternoon was going to turn out on that day. But fortunately, this can be gifted because I did get the mat cut. I have difficulty with any of these pieces that are straight lines because it's so hard to line them up in the mat. I'm sure you can see that it's crooked, but I tried and tried and tried, and it was either really awful or, well, this is almost right, but, and then I'd adjust it again. Oh no, this is really awful. And then I'd adjust it again. Well, this is almost right, but, so I finally left it with one of the almost rights. This is done on 18 count. I think it's an antique white. It was a kit. It came with everything needed. There are 8 colors. As with most projects, I did a center start and worked my way up to the top so that I could work down. But I did do it a little differently in that all of the black within the cliff dwellings themselves, I did before filling in the brown behind it. Well, I would do some of the black and then fill in brown, then do more black, then fill in brown, and so on. But normally I go strictly top to bottom, so that was different to actually put the black in before doing the brown. And the black on things like the plants, I put in after all the colors. So it's a little different than my usual way of doing things. The total number of stitches I have in my head was something like 7,000. That may not be right. It was a lot. If I were to look at the chart again and figure out, all the squares and everything, but maybe it was, because it is 18 count. Anyway, I did not work on it exclusively since I last saw you. I worked on other things first, but this took up a pretty good chunk of time, say in October and November, because I never have enough time to stitch. Anyway, that is the Gila Cliff Dwellings National Monument from a kit by the Posey Collection, all done up. I'm sorry you can't see the colors better, and ready to be gifted. Something else that I worked on, I'll go ahead and show you one of the new starts. I did this start for a couple of reasons. One was that people are always talking about their car projects, and I thought, how do you even begin to do a car project? I always have to keep washing my hands and things like that when I'm stitching. So the only time I ever did any kind of a car project was on one of my day trips with relatives, and I was riding in a car, and I brought, I made them actually stop because I'd forgotten to bring one, to get a container of hand wipes so that I could keep my hands clean and stitch. The driving kind of made me car sick. The fabric was horrible. It wasn't a real great experience, so I wasn't eager to necessarily repeat that. But there's this place near where I live, up in the foothills of the mountains, that you can drive and park and see just gorgeous views of the valley. And I thought, what if I drove up there and saw if I could do some kind of little car project? Just sitting and enjoying the view. Wouldn't that be a pleasant kind of thing to do? So I pulled out one of my really small projects. And the other reason for doing it, there were 2 reasons, is that I didn't know I was going to take 4 months to get back to you. So I didn't know I'd have the Gila Cliff Dwellings National Monument done to show you. I thought if I'm going to visit with my flosstube friends at all, I'm going to need to stitch something little. So I tried this car thing with something little. I'm sure many of you have seen this. Again, you can probably tell how washed out the colors are if you have seen this in person. I got mine at Walmart. I think they had it at Hobby Lobby too. And it's really a very bright blue and green and pink. And it was very inexpensive, and somehow I ended up with 2 of them. I must have bought them at different times. But I thought that's small enough to put in a little box, take with me, throw in some scissors. It has its own little frame for when it's done. Not too many colors to deal with. By the way, I normally wear plain shirts so that nothing clashes with what I'm showing you, but this is just going to have to be what it's going to be. My real plan today is to film this and upload it while I go shop, because I'm not ready for the holidays. I'm not having a good holiday season. Again, if you're interested in any details on that, they'll follow after the stitching, but virtually no shopping has been done at this point for reasons, and I'm going to go do that while this is uploading, I hope. So this is what I have so far. Clearly not very much. Let me show you his picture again so you can see. Not very much. One of the things that made him a little challenging to start was the fractional stitches. I don't mind fractional stitching, but what I like is to know exactly which part of the stitch is supposed to be 3/4 or which is supposed to be 1/4, and the usual rule of thumb is whatever's going to be in the foreground closest to the viewer should have the 3/4 stitch. But the fractional stitches are coming all along the border between the blue and the green, and I don't see how there's any foreground to that. I mean, he's an owl. It's all his body. Which part is closer to you, the blue or the green? The green is lower down. Is his head closer to you because he's leaning forward? Is his green belly further back? Or is the green closer to you? I don't know. Anyway, I went in most cases with the green. And there's not a lot there. And it's just as well I didn't make y'all wait till that was done to come see you, because it's not going to be done for a while. But the stitching experience in the car was okay. It's, the views were gorgeous. The sunshine was enough to see by. It's really kind of a little awkward. There was one other time that I tried to stitch in a car. It was a little snowman ornament when I was waiting for an upholsterer to finish up something in his shop. And that was a little tricky too, because I'd forgotten to bring my needle threader. This one I had all my supplies. I don't know about these car projects. I'm looking at them as a possibility in the future, but I don't know. Okay, what else did I work on? I had another new start. There's not much to see there, and I wasn't going to. And it doesn't have nearly as good an excuse as the little one, which was to try out car projects and have something to show you. But it was just seasonal. I'm having a really hard time feeling seasonal at all this year, and I thought maybe at least if I started stitching this. And I was. Things actually got worse a couple of days ago. I was stitching this. I started it a little before then, and it was helping out. It was helping me kind of get into the holidays, feel like Christmas was coming. But yeah, that didn't last for reasons. Anyway, this is Ladybug Designs, is the designer. It's a stained glass nativity, and I haven't gotten very much done. They kind of recommended doing all the black outlines first and then filling in the panes of the glass, but I went ahead and did my center start. You're going to see a thread hanging off. Sorry about that. I've got Mary's hands and face and part of the beaming starlight behind her and the beginning of baby Jesus's halo. So let me show you that picture again so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. That circular bit you see is the edge of the halo. Like I said, Mary's face, Mary's hand, part of the starlight, and some halo going there. That's it. There should be more, but by the way, this is not great Aida to be stitching on. I don't care for it much. It's very stiff. The Aida for the 18 count Aida on the Cliff Dwellings was much nicer. This is not nice stuff. Okay, that was the two starts. What else have I stitched on? Well, the first thing I stitched on after last seeing you, I have so little to show that really it's almost pointless, but if I'm going to make this into a bit of a whip parade, might as well. So I was working on my birdies, my birds of a feather, which I've shown many times before. If you want to know where the chart is from, you can look at the old videos. The bird himself has his back stitch, and I did this branch and some of the berries. That's it. I don't think I added anything else since I saw you. All of the cross stitching is done. You can see how the lower birdie's popping out compared to the top birdie. But back stitching is just not my favorite thing, I guess, and pretty as it is, I set it aside to work on something else, and I will come back to it. I want to do it. Just like I said, life keeps happening. So let me put this up and show you what I did put a lot of work in. Okay, I've got some major respect for some of you guys out there when it comes to this next one. I am not a big sampler girl, as you've probably figured out if you've watched me much. I did lose my heart to Dutch Beauty from Perman when Tracy P. long ago did some kind of going through her stash thing and showed hers, and I went on 123 Stitch and ordered it, and they had one of their recommendations come up that said, if you like this, you might like that, and that's when I saw and bought His Eyes on the Sparrow, which I've been showing you for a while, from Heartstring Samplery. But that's really kind of about it for my sampler days. And I knew when I got this one it was going to take a very long time. And I have told you before, I started it on apparel linen, thinking that was going to work out okay. It's kind of hard to figure out the actual dimensions of that, because it's not equal in both directions. So I'd say it's maybe 32 by 40 count. I don't know, it's kind of weird. Anyway, I did make some progress, and the reason I have kudos for you guys is I've made it to the house. I think I might have added, this plant might be new since the last time you saw it. Not sure, but definitely been working on the house. I was working on the center of the house. I might have shown you the little small house before, but that thing seemed to take forever. And some of you guys stitch these things with little houses all the time. And this is the first little house I've done, and I never would have thought how unending stitching a little house can seem. Doesn't look like much. I mean, it's so simple. It's just filling in colors. But wow. I stopped because by the time I got done with that big center block, I just had no interest left in doing the little house next to it at the moment. So when I feel inspired again, and I know a couple of these flowers are new, I think. I really can't remember exactly what I showed you previously, but the center block of the house, for sure. That's what I spent most of my September time on, I think. Here's, I'm only still up in the corner. How do you hold this? Sorry, guys. It's been a while. Very wrinkly, colors you can't see. But there we are. It's coming along. It will get done someday, if fate permits. If I'm still around and still stitching. It's going to take a while. And I am not going to run right out and get another piece for the big old house in the middle anytime soon. I can tell you that. Okay, what else did I work on? Two more that I put stitches in. One I showed you once, I think, briefly, and really I didn't exactly show it. I think I was stitching on it and told you it was there, if I recall. I put a few more stitches in it. There's still not enough for you to see what it is. I'll tell you it's a chart from Artisy. I'll tell you it's on a 36-inch scroll frame, because it's going to be a big one. You can't tell what that is, can you? But I put some stitches in it, so I'm showing it to you. I fully intend to show you the chart and what it's going to be once something recognizable is on there. Right now there's nothing recognizable. There's about 3 shades of green and some black and a couple of pinks and browns and some cream colors, and nothing you can tell yet. When you can tell what it is, I will show you what's going on, because no way am I going to make you wait until I have that whole thing filled in. But there's something growing there that you might be able to recognize when I get enough of it done. Okay, one more, and then I'll show you the unstitched whips, and then maybe I'll chat to you about the other things I thought I might mention, what's been going on in life. Sorry, I was trying to think if I had any more details to give you about the ones I've showed, but I think I did what I could as far as telling you. They've all been, other than the one on apparel linen, they've all been on Aida mostly 14 count except for the cliff dwellings. And here's another 14 count piece that I have showed you before. This is the other one I was working on after I finished the cliff dwellings. It's my carousel lion from Bernat. He's really quite bright and colorful, but I know the light's terrible today. I've been working on his border. So last time you saw him, his body was done. He's got quite a bit of backstitching and things that are going to continue over his body and the pole and on the border and everywhere else. There's lazy daisies, there's French knots, there's just all kinds of stuff. We had everything except this side border. So the border where it goes down the side and across the bottom, that's what I've added. And I did that since finishing the cliff dwellings and before starting the stained glass nativity. I set him aside to begin working on the nativity. And that's not a lot for 4 months, I realize. I mean, well, the cliff dwellings, I pretty much did that whole thing, and a little bit on the lion, and a little bit on his eyes on the sparrow, and nothing on my other 3 whips. But I'll go ahead and remind you of them anyway, because in the new year I do hope to work on all of them. I don't consider any of them yet to be unfinished objects. I had showed you, I think, in my previous video that I had gotten to this point on my White Rabbit, an Arenco Originals chart of Alice in Wonderland piece. And I do intend to keep working on him. He's not done and he's not forgotten, and I will do more. I also have my piece that's on black Aida that's going to be Floral Splendor, I think they call it. It was an artiste kit, so you know from that the threads, for example, are really lousy. And I have not worked on it for a while, but I've looked at it. I pulled it out and looked at it. And it's got only a little bit done. Quite a long way to go. But I have not forgotten it either. I did, as I said, take a look at it. I want to get it done. I want to get them all done. I mean, more on that when I do my Sable videos. And the last one is the one that has not been worked on for the longest time. And yes, there really absolutely is a chart available from, what do they call themselves? They have them at 123 Stitch. Donna Cooler Design Studio has the chart for doing it on your own fabric, but mine was the stamped cross stitch, which is my Tiffany wedding sampler. And I hate stamped cross stitch, basically. That's why it's not progressing much. But you've seen that before. And I haven't forgotten it either, and I want to do more of it. And it will look something like that when finished. If you like the looks of that under all that plastic and everything, the chart is available. So that was my whip parade, guys. I don't think I've left anything out. How many does that give me? 3 I didn't work on. 4 I did work on. 2 new starts. So is that 9? That's 9. And that's my stitching. Thank you very much for tuning in and watching. I hope you saw something of interest there. And now I know this is not a very upbeat video, I'm sorry, but I'm going to talk about some life updates and my Sable videos and what's going on with them. And for anyone interested, stick around. Anyone that's not, thank you, and go your own merry way. Have a good time. So, what's going on? Why did it take me 4 months to get back here? Why am I so down? A couple of different reasons. Late in October, I lost an immediate family member. It was pretty much unexpected. I mean, we knew it was going to happen eventually, but not when it did. And eventually, I mean years. We knew this was the outcome that was going to happen eventually, but hit really hard. And I'm actually planning to refilm my Sable videos. My stash acquired beyond life expectancy for a couple of reasons. One of them was technical difficulties. I was thinking of posting the first one and played it back, and my microphone had moved too much and the sound wasn't right in the second half. But I know I mentioned this family member, as someone that I was going to stitch for and things like that, and I really, I can't post those. It's painful. So I'm gonna start those over. And we've been dealing with this loss since, and it's not quite finished yet because our loved one's birthday would have been a couple of days after Christmas, and we're having the final interment on that date. We already had a memorial service and things like that. But it's still, it's kind of clouding the holidays to be dealing with that. And I'm sure some of you have been in the same situation before, so you understand. But I'm thinking of starting all my Sable videos over, partly for that reason, and partly because I don't really think I had a clear focus for what I was trying to accomplish with them, which I'll talk about in a minute. Because the other reason I'm really down now, besides losing, losing an immediate family member is bad, and that's the deep and lasting thing. But the fresh pain comes from a couple of days ago. I was getting worried about my kitty. I thought he had a possible infection because his eyes were really kind of gooey, and well, actually I thought it was allergies. And then Thursday, when I came home from work, it was really bad looking, and his eye looked terrible, and I was feeling his jaw, and his jaw didn't feel right. And I know that for the last week or so he's been off his food a little bit, and I tried offering him things like Nutrical, and the first couple of times that's this very palatable gooey stuff, and he ate some of that the first couple of times I offered it, but Thursday he didn't. Maybe it was Friday morning. Anyway, we happened to have a half day at work on Friday, so I was really hoping that I could get him to a vet and see if I'd waited too long, if it was some kind of infection they could do something about. But I took him there fully expecting, they'd tell me, what his prognosis was and what they could do. And I told him on the way over that I knew he didn't like to go to the vet, but he had to see a doctor, and I hoped I hadn't waited too long, and they were going to try to make him feel better. And it wasn't what I thought at all. And they had to euthanize him. And those of you who've been in that position know how much that hurts. And so I'm not going to tell you all the 1,000 ways I'm going to miss him. But that was 2 days ago, and I'm still coping with that. And he loved Christmas. So everything is not going great these holidays. And I had a really bad cold, and then my back went bad, so I've gotten nothing done for the holidays, basically. All the things that needed to be bought and shipped to people who live, in other states, haven't even been bought yet. So clearly they're not getting there on time. The very few things that I've purchased haven't been wrapped. The days that I thought I might go shopping didn't happen, either because of my back or my kitty or things like that. Yeah, I know that things will get better. I know that. It's a hard time. So, I said I'd talk about the Sable videos too. I am still planning to refilm those. And it's because a couple of reasons. I have so much of this stuff. And what I filmed before, I'm not sure what my focus or intent was. Part of it is you like to look at what you have, and you want there to be some reason or purpose behind having it. And if you show it to others, maybe at least you're sharing it in some way, because you know it's never going to get stitched by you because there's too darn much of it. It's impossible. If you had 5 lifetimes, you couldn't stitch it all, but at least you can show it to someone else who might be inspired and want to do something with it. So I think that's going to be more of the focus when I film them, but I really wasn't sure what I was doing when I did them before. And also, I'm still trying to, cut back on the purchasing. I haven't made any secret of the fact I told you guys early on in an early video when I objected to the use of the term enabling. I said enabling is not a good thing for everybody. People use it as though it's an okay thing, and it isn't necessarily. So I hope I'm not enabling anybody that doesn't need to be enabled with the Sable videos I intend to put up. I'm hoping it's for the healthy among you, but I told you I have hoarding tendencies. I don't think I'm a full-blown hoarder, but I have too much stuff. I have way too much stuff, and part of it, my parents hung on to everything too, especially my dad, and we're still going through their things a couple of years after the fact, and I've got way too much stitching and things, and so I borrowed a book. It was a very interesting book. It was from our local library. It was called Stuff, Compulsive Hoarding and the Meaning of Things, I think was the full title. And it was not a self-help guide for hoarders or anything like that. It wasn't meant to be sensational. It had a couple of authors, but Randy Frost was the principal author, and he was investigating it. He's someone who works with patients with OCD, and he wanted to know more about the way hoarders think. Now, this is kind of an older book now. I think it's about 10 years old. But he interviewed lots of different people with this condition, and was kind of describing it, but he was trying to get at their thought processes and things. And one of the quotes he had that really struck home with me, and I'll try to explain how I think it applies to my stuff in a moment. He was talking about one of the hoarders, and he talked about some of them, how they're perfectionists, and I've never thought of myself as a perfectionist, but the way he described how it impacted what they do, I kind of thought, well, maybe I am in the way he's describing. But he gave this quote: "Most of us learn that any action we take means pursuing one opportunity at the expense of another. For people afflicted with this problem, hoarding, the fear of losing an opportunity is greater than the reward of taking one. Consequently, all opportunities are preserved, but none are pursued." And he was kind of talking about people who just kept getting more and more things and not necessarily using them. And I feel that way about a lot of my things. I have a lot of books, and having the book so that I know I could read it is kind of as important to me as the reading. I mean, not really, I want to read it, but knowing it's there to be read matters. I'll buy them sometimes just so they'll be there to be read. I did not buy this one, by the way. It can stay at the library. The stitching kits, knowing that I have them and they can be stitched, is important, even if they don't get stitched. All opportunities are preserved, but none are pursued, is what he said. Well, it's not that none are pursued. I do read some of the books. I'm working my way through the books. I'll never get through all of them. I've read about a third. I have over 3,000. Let's just put it that way. The actual number is about 4,000 volumes. I do catalog them at Library Thing, but that includes cookbooks and pattern books and coloring books and reference books, and I don't consider those books that you read. So when we're talking about books actually to be read, I've read about a third of the more than 3,000 that are there to be read. How am I ever going to find time to read the rest? I don't know. I've cut back significantly on my book purchases but they do still happen now and then. I got myself some for Christmas. So the opportunity to read them is there. The stitching. I told you guys once that sometimes when I start a kit, I pick one that I think is kind of inconsequential. It was cheap or something like that Floral Splendor that I showed you. Really, the one I most want to do is a beautiful Dimensions Gold kit. I think it's something about Nature's Finery or something. I showed it to you once. And it's got a similar plants on a black background and everything with a little bird. And somehow doing this one means I'm not somehow messing up the other one. And that's where the talking about perfectionism in this book on stuff came in. He talked about, hoarders who would get two of something so that they could do one rather than messing up the other. Like one lady collected magazines, and she had to have one beautiful copy that would never be read and one that she could read. And I have been known occasionally in my life to do something like that. I remember being, I don't know, maybe 10 and having a Whitman's. Anybody remember Whitman's and their cheap kids coloring books and crafting books and things? They had a color by number of state birds. And I either had two of them or I was glad because they had one design where they had the numbers for the bird and one without, like facing each other. So I might not have actually had two copies of the book, but I remember there were two copies of each bird so that I could do the color by number one first before doing the other so that I wouldn't mess up the other because I'd know all the colors to do and everything. I never colored any of them, folks. I bought a little totem pole to carve once when I was a kid. Never got carved. I was afraid I couldn't do it right. I still have it around the house somewhere. I need to do it. I made myself this summer do a little dinosaur dragon type model thing that I bought in a gas station a couple years back that came with a little set of paints, and it was, paint your own little, it was basically this white resin thing. I made myself do it this summer because it was never going to get done otherwise. Is it very well done? No, but at least it's done. So I have this habit of getting things with every intention of doing them and then not wanting to ruin them. At least with cross stitch, for the most part, it's a simple enough thing that I can do it. It's just little X's. Now that doesn't explain why I have so many, but as I said, the opportunity is still there. So I think that explains some of what's going on is those hoarding tendencies I have. And there's no way I can stitch all these, but they're beautiful and I want to do them. And the possibility of doing them is there once you own the chart or the kit or the whatever. You know what I mean? So I am going to redo my Sable videos. By the way, if you want to understand more about how hoarders think, I do recommend Stuff, Compulsive Hoarding, and the Meaning of Things by Randy O. Frost. You can just borrow it from your library too. They have things like Interlibrary Loan. And that will help you get inside some people's heads. I couldn't relate to all of them, but some of them I thought, yeah, that's going on with me. And my is not nearly as bad as the people he was describing. I am not one of those level 5 hoarders where the house is overflowing with stuff. I have trouble finding time to, do the housekeeping. I can use all of my major appliances and sinks and bathrooms and things. That's one of the signs that if you're an actual hoarder that it's gotten out of control is when you can't use things. But my house is messy. I admit it. Anyway, I plan to redo the Sable videos focused on things that I think will be useful to others because I've got all the stuff. And as I was saying earlier, the only thing I can really do with it, I want to stitch it someday. I'm not ready to give it up. But at least if I show it to others, those who don't have a hoarding problem might see something that they really like and would like to add to their lives. And now they'll be aware of it and they can go out and look for it and they can take pleasure in it. So somebody out there may be stitching what I'm showing. And that at least is accomplishing something. Okay, so I think that covers what I wanted to talk about today. I am hoping in 2020, my goal is retirement. I'm not Social Security age or anywhere close yet. Got more than a decade to get there, but I am one of the dwindling number of Americans who are fortunate enough to be employed in a career that comes with a pension. And it'll mean a big cut in pay, obviously, but I think I've had enough of working, and I'm aiming for that. It's going to be several months before that happens. And losing my kitty makes that kind of hard because he hated it when I went to work every day. He would get angry when I got up in the morning with the alarm clock. So did I. I hate the alarm clock. And he would follow me to the door in the morning, and he would hear me coming home at night and be there to see me. And I would always promise him that, yeah, I hated leaving for work as much as he hated me going, and someday I'd retire and I could stay with him. And obviously that's not happening. So that's just one of many things that every day when I go to work, I'm going to think about him. And when I come home, I'll think about him. But anyway, I do hope to retire in the spring. And that'll mean more stitching time, I hope. I hope. My sister told me, you think there'll be more time, and there isn't really, because she doesn't work. She does art and things, but she doesn't have an employee-employer type relationship with anybody where they're paying her to work any number of hours a week. And she says, you think there'll be time, but there isn't. And her husband is retired. And she says, you think there'll be time, but there isn't. I think there'll be time compared to what I'm doing now. It'll be dependent on how I use it. But we still have the house to clean up from my parents. And actually now with the loss of my other family member, there's another house that has to be cleared. That's going to take up a lot of time. Trying to get my life organized. I think I could clean this house and make a difference with more time. There are times I do. At Thanksgiving, I wanted to do what I did last year, which was I spent 4 hours a day for a week around Thanksgiving cleaning my home office space, and it made a huge difference. That's where I'm stitching this piece now. It's because I have room to lay it out and work on it. But that didn't happen this Thanksgiving for various reasons, including, deaths in the family and all. But I think there will be more time for stitching, and every time that I see somebody doing Flossmas and showing their things. Oh, by the way, if you have not checked out some of the littler Flossmas channels, please do. A couple of the ones I've been looking at. There's a nice lady named Gwen, who I think is in South Korea right now, but she's South African, and she stitches under, or posts her videos as SXSW, XS like cross stitch, SXSW, and she's been doing an advent calendar where she stitches something new every day, and I think you would enjoy seeing her process of doing that and watching her stitching. I also have been checking in periodically with, I think she's Dutch, and I don't know how to say her YouTube name, but it looks to me like Border Maiden. BORDURMEIDEN, and she's doing a new advent ornament every day. She doesn't show herself on camera, she doesn't talk, she just has music, but all of her videos seem to be kind of time-lapse things, and she's been posting for a long time. And I find her now and then when I do a search just for cross-stitch to see who's posted a cross-stitch video today. I don't do flosstube because she doesn't post under flosstube, but I like looking at her little advent calendars, ornaments, and I like looking at Gwen's things, and of course everybody else is doing some great stuff out there too. But if you haven't seen those two ladies, give them a look and see what they've been up to this month. They both have very few subscribers, but I enjoy seeing what they're doing. I think that's it for me. I told you I was going to talk after the video, and I've talked. Thank you if you listened. You're totally forgiven if you didn't. It's not always pleasant listening to somebody with sad tales to tell or to talking about mental health conditions. But thank you very much, and I will post another video, I think, when I have a finish. Maybe it'll be that tiny little owl. It might be something larger that takes longer to do. I don't know, but I am hoping to make real progress with all of the things I showed you in the coming year because of my hoped for retirement. I think it'll make a difference in the number of hours I can stitch. Yeah, I've rambled long enough. Thank you for listening. I'm sure I could think of many more things to say, but you don't need to hear them. Have a great holiday, the rest of you guys, if you are celebrating any kind of winter holiday at this time of year. I always think of the late actor Harry Anderson, who one year at the Hollywood Christmas Parade, which they would televise, wished, when they stopped the camera to speak to him, a happy winter solstice to all his druid friends. And winter solstice was yesterday. So a happy winter solstice, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, whatever you celebrate. I hope that you are having a good time and everything's coming together well. And those who have sad memories from this time of year, which I already had from losing one of my parents about a week before Christmas some time ago, I hope that you get through this holiday well and that there's a lot of happy things in it too. So thank you all, and I'll talk to you the next time. Bye.